All right, so I'm here with my good friend, one of the most talented composers I know, and super nice guy, Jim David. Jim, thank you for coming on the show.
Sean, it's a pleasure, as always.
Appreciate you, man. All right, so I want to kind of talk about these four new pieces you have, and I also want to kind of give the viewers some insight into your creative process and kind of just your backstory a little bit. So I wonder if we could just start, if you could describe to us kind of what it is that got you into composing in the first place. I know your dad was a band director, and obviously there's some parallels there, but I think, you could have maybe been a band director. So I guess before we get into the four pieces specifically, like, could you just kind of update us kind of on your backstory? What is it specifically that led you down the road of composition versus music ed or conducting or the other kind of disciplines in the arts?
Sure, and I'll try to make this as short as I can, but I feel like, uh, I was drawn to composing as soon as I realized it was something that was even a possibility. It was actually even before I started playing an instrument. I did a little unit in my elementary music class about music notation, and that just immediately drew me in. Just the idea that these weird little squiggles somehow turned into these amazing sounds that you were hearing, and that immediately sort of got me interested. And I tried to write my first piece in the sixth grade, and that was for band. I took a piece that we were playing in band and then rearranged it and put the melody in the trombone part. I'm a trombone player, so I thought that would make the piece way cooler to have the melody be in the trombone part instead. And so, amazingly, my band director actually let me do this and put it in front of the band and let them play it. I copied out all the parts by hand, that sort of thing. And it went about as well as you would expect, which is to say, it was a total disaster. But that kind of got me down the path, and I thought it was interesting, just kind of how these little things could work out in an interesting way. And I went through and did a whole bunch of different things during my undergraduate experience. I did music education as my bachelor's degree, and I really got kind of a love for teaching at that point, teaching middle school and high school band a bit. I had a really wonderful supervising teacher that at the middle school level that really helped me out there. So I knew I wanted to be a teacher of some capacity, but I knew I wanted to be a composer kind of as my main thing. And that's sort of what led me into doing the master's and then doctorate and then eventually becoming a professor of composition here. My dad, was a huge influence there as well as my brothers. They're all three were jazz musicians, and so that got me wanting to be a jazz musician as well. And band has been something just part of my life the whole time. Ironically, I didn't start writing for band until right at the end of my doctorate, actually. A lot of my teachers didn't feel like writing for band was serious enough. And so I was told to write more chamber music and orchestral music and things like that. And so, mercifully, as a doctoral student, I got a special fellowship to actually write a piece for concert band. It was for a local high school, and that really, really changed my whole outlook on what was possible with band. It was a really fantastic band program. They had just played the Second Symphony the same semester, and I put my piece in front of them, and it was, again, a mild disaster, even as a doctoral student there. So at that point, though, I saw that there were some interesting things happening here, and I really enjoyed the process of working with a band conductor as well as high school students. Just all of that was a totally different experience than sort of the academic world of composition, and I've kind of stuck with it ever since then. And that was sadly 20 years ago now, but yeah, I've really enjoyed the journey of doing this. And I guess I met you about 10 years ago. And that's been an incredible, journey, sort of seeing how the whole world of independent publishing has evolved there. So yeah, it's a great place to be. I'm not complaining at all.
Well, it's crazy how that stuff in our youth really sticks with us. So I'm grateful that your sixth grade teacher like let you, do your little trombone exercise in vanity there. So perfect. I think, your music has some of the most like interesting, like programmatic and like source material that comes out of it, in my opinion. So like completely separate from like your writing process, like what is your like inspiration aggregation process like? Like you're gonna write a piece, like where's this stuff coming from? Like are you like reading books like every day? Are you just like surfing the internet looking for something interesting? Like where is your like kind of oasis of like source material even coming from these days?
Well, I think that's something that I've always kind of had a curiosity there. I talk about this with my students a lot, actually. Being open to experience, being open to new ideas is something you have to actually cultivate and practice as a composer. It's just another skill, just like counterpoint or ear training or anything like that. And I really feel strongly that having that sort of liberal arts philosophy of seeing how different art forms and media and information can all inform each other, it just makes for more interesting music. I don't think I would be able to write music if I didn't have those inspirations there. So to me, I don't really think of it as like something strange or foreign. It's just part of who I am as a person, is trying to find these connections and seeing how that can then create an interesting, specific experience for the listener. I think it's just giving that entry point for the listener is really essential, and it's essential for me too. Like in the actual writing of the piece, that helps a lot. So, I don't know. I feel like as many books as I can read, there's always more out there. Every time I go to a new city, I want to get to the art museum because this visual art has such a huge impact on so much of what I do. So yeah, I'm always trying to find those kinds of things. Travel is another big aspect of it too. We just got back from our first trip to Spain with the Colorado State University Wind Symphony, and that was incredible. And I've already got a bunch of new ideas that came just from that experience there.
I think it's fun to be so easily inspired. It just kind of sounds like one hand's washing the other. You're a curious dude. You're seeking out these things. They're kind of manifesting themselves like in your writing maybe. And I guess to that end, with the Second Symphony, must have been a huge kind of process to get as deep as you had to get into like the beatniks and that whole thing. So like, could you talk a little bit about the piece itself, kind of what drew you in so deeply to want to write a full symphony on the topic, and like how you felt you were able to translate that literature maybe into sound? Maybe that's a good starting point.
Right. So that one, it's kind of a combination of things. One was wanting to write a new symphony that was a little different than my first symphony. My first symphony is pretty long and it's pretty difficult, and it has a lot of instruments. So it's not the most accessible piece in the world. So I was trying to come up with something that would work well in more situations than that first symphony was. And so I was kind of looking at like what would be a good concept that would sort of go with that. And I really didn't have much of an idea yet. The concept for the first symphony was really strong, but I knew I didn't want to do that again. I didn't want to do something like that again. So with the second symphony, the very first inspiration for it actually was at the 2023, no, 2022 drum corps finals, DCI finals. My brother is a huge drum corps fan, and he dragged me to the drum corps finals one year, and they did this show. It was the Cadets, R.I.P.
Shout
the
out,
Cadets.
shout out, cadets.
Yes, they did a show based on Jack Kerouac, and I thought, oh, that's really cool. I hadn't thought about Kerouac in a while. Of course, I'd read On the Road in high school. But then I kind of thought about, well, that's a really interesting thing. The idea of like a road trip concept would be kind of neat. But I definitely wanted to expand just beyond that. So I looked at ways to maybe tie in to each of the different places that were sort of most iconic to me. And so that's how I ended up finding each of the different source material for the Second Symphony. I can go into each of those if you want me to.
Yeah, I mean, just kind of talk to us about how you just translated the writings into sound and like maybe what you pulled out, what was interesting to you. This one's kind of a combination of travel and literature, right? So fusing some of your other interests, it sounds like.
Yeah, absolutely. So with the first movement, that was Lawrence Ferlinghetti. Ferlinghetti was, really central to all of the Beat Generation writers. He was their publisher. He was kind of their dad in a lot of ways. Kind of helped them have careers and helped them understand, how to work with publicists and that kind of thing. But he was a great writer in himself and wrote a lot in New York, but eventually moved to San Francisco. They all kind of moved back and forth between those two cities, and that was kind of the journey of the piece, is starting in New York and ending in San Francisco. With that first one, I really gravitated to the jazz language there too. Ferlinghetti would actually perform with a jazz trio or a jazz quartet behind him in Greenwich Village in the 1940s, and that was really fascinating to me, and that actually builds into the piece quite a bit. And that jazz language was really essential to me too. It was a way to bridge that to my own sound there. The hardest one was the second movement because I wanted to have something that tied to the South. I grew up in rural South Georgia, and that world, is something that's really still important to me, and trying to express that culture in different ways was kind of essential. And I hit upon Bob Kaufman and kind of in my research here as one of the only Southern Beat Generation writers. And again, talked really deeply about jazz and about the importance of jazz. And that was something that immediately made the piece kind of fall together there. I kind of looked at that second movement as then the sort of touchstone that the whole rest of the piece would build from those two moments, the New York and then to New Orleans with the second movement. The third movement then gets to Colorado because, again, I want to tie as much to myself because that's my current place I've lived for the last 16 years. And I wanted to capture that sense of kind of natural beauty that we have in Colorado, the sense of transcendence that we have. A big aspect of the writing in all of the beat writers is this idea of our connection to nature and connection to the landscape and how that creates this sense of transcendence. And that was kind of the goal with that particular movement. And then the last movement gets to San Francisco, and that ties into Allen Ginsberg. Ginsberg is one of the most challenging writers, I think, and just he challenging in the sense of his ideology is really challenging, and so trying to capture something that brings all of this piece together, brings all of the ideas back together in the most sort of spectacular way that I could, kind of capturing a little bit of the messiness of some of the beat writers there a bit too. When I talked to the graduate student that conducted it here at Colorado State, James, we talked about that. It's I ended up kind of abandoning forms midway through. It's oh, it's too neat. It's not. It can't sound that perfect. It needs to sound a little bit weird to sort of capture that energy of Ginsberg a bit there. So, yeah, it was really fascinating going through that and finding each of the individual poems. Once I had those, though, the piece was very joyous to work on. I kind of just, it was a year ago to when we're recording this right now, the late summer of last year. It was really just a wonderful process to come in every day and just continue to work on this piece. Yeah, it's one of my favorites I've done recently.
And I think your idea to kind of set it up, as this traveling each movement from, east to west, I kind of think it really makes it appealing for audiences and performers to take on such a big piece, to program it, to rehearse it, to put the time into it, to present it. People, they want to be captivated. And I think, the best pieces kind of leave us wanting more. Or I'm into this now after I played this piece. And I think this is a perfect example. And kind of as you describe your process, you talk about travel, literature. The other thing that kind of sticks out to me from my just observations that you're into technology too, or some element of that, right? There's Message from Arcibo, there's Atomic Time, and this other piece, Pale Blue Dot, kind of touches on kind of technology in a way, and Carl Sandburg. And what I was thinking about this is that literature is kind of, it's somewhat vague, you're interpreting the words and you're making your own meaning from them. And the sciences are very much the opposite of that. It's very literal, 1 + 1 = 2, and this is the scientific process. So how has your interest in the sciences maybe influenced your process, and how did that lead you to Pale Blue Dot, which is kind of at the other end of the spectrum? We have this grandiose symphony, and now we have this kind of grade 2, grade 3 kind of more approachable piece. So what's been your experience with the sciences, and maybe on this piece in particular, what drew you in?
Yeah, that's again something that goes way back. I've really loved um, experiencing that aspect of just curiosity and discovery. I think that particularly science fiction has been a big influence on me there, and some of these great writers. Carl Sagan is the one that really captured me in a lot of different ways, and that's the basis for this piece. That was also partly the basis for a message from Arecibo as well, and his ability to express as a scientist himself, he was able to sort of bridge that gap between the arts and the sciences, and that's something that really meant a lot to me. But this particular piece, this was done in collaboration with the middle school outreach ensemble that we have here on campus at Colorado State, and also with our Air Ready labs that look at air pollution and how it is affecting people in Colorado, specifically looking at community effects that it has in Colorado. And I wanted to come up with a concept then that would hopefully speak to middle school age students in a profound way, but then also speak to that specific message of how our environment is really fragile and precious and something not to be taken lightly. And that was really the main thing there. I thought about Pale Blue Dot. It was, again, one that I read the book years ago, but it had kind of been sitting in the back of my mind a bit, and always thought it would be a good one. Much to my astonishment, no one had written a piece with that title before. No one had written a piece of music with that title in mind before, and so I was like, "Yes, this is a perfect piece to do something like that." And I should mention, Pale Blue Dot is based on a famous photograph that was taken by the Voyager spacecraft, and Carl Sagan actually suggested this, that they turn the cameras back around to look towards the Earth from this incredible distance as it was leaving the solar system, and you see it as this tiny little speck of light among this massive field of emptiness, and that's such a powerful image that really sort of motivated the whole piece forward, and thinking about the fragility of where we are, and just the way that he talks about that. It was so impactful and just seemed like a perfect way to capture everything that piece was trying to accomplish. Writing a grade two is a completely different kind of process. They seem to either work or they don't. Either to me they're very hard. They're almost more like trying to capture a watercolor as opposed to like an oil painting. You have less detail to work with, but everything has to be kind of absolutely perfect and in the moment like that. So it's really fun to do those. I don't want to do them all the time because they're honestly really hard to get just right. But yeah, I really enjoyed that process.
Well, I was going to say, could you kind of compare and contrast? What did you find to be more challenging, writing a four-movement grandiose symphony based on all these poets, or having to condense down your choices to make it appropriate for a younger grade? Like, what do you personally find to be more of a challenge?
Yeah, I think the challenge with grade one, grade two, grade three is just you have fewer materials to work with. So therefore, the individual ideas have to be stronger on their own. You have less ability to really push and pull with different kinds of textures and harmonies. You're much more limited there. So me kind of coming from, I wrote mostly really complex, really chromatic sounding music for most of my schooling, all the way through my doctorate. And then to write this very diatonic sounding music was actually a huge challenge, something that took me years to kind of feel comfortable with having a language that felt like myself. So that was one challenge. But then to reduce that even further to something that works for like a grade two is even a bigger sort of thing there. And you've got interesting things you have to think about with orchestration. That's such a big aspect of it. Is the orchestration is much more difficult there too. So you have to have I feel like a very different philosophy behind it. Again, I keep making these analogies here: watercolor versus a oil painting. I think maybe a poem versus a novel would be another way of thinking about it. It's poems are just as hard, even though they're shorter and have maybe a simpler amount of things you can discuss in a poem than you can in a novel. But I think they're no more or less no less artful than what you can achieve there. So yeah, it's something I really feel like I enjoy doing it, and I hope to really kind of continue to refine my process writing for those types of groups.
Yeah, and I think there's a huge appetite for that kind of in our sector as well. So I think everyone would appreciate your continued consideration of that. I guess that was a perfect segue with your poetry analogy into My Lyre in the Sky, right? Based on a poem. So when you're taking on something maybe a little bit different aesthetic, maybe a little bit different feel from these first two pieces we're talking about, and you're kind of electing to limit yourself to a poem, essentially. Is that more difficult for you to kind of draw the music out, or are you so taken by the poem in the case of this piece that you feel like, okay, like this is more than enough material for me. I love the nature of this. I love kind of how it unfolds. Like, so what is it about this poetry on this new piece, new at the time of this recording, that you kind of led you down the path to make another literature inspired piece?
So My Lyre Within the Sky was a really interesting commission. It was done in memoriam to a person that had actually recently passed away, and it was in trying to celebrate their life, but they're a person that actually dealt with a lot of mental health issues throughout their life, and trying to capture that and talk to the commissioner about this was something that was very powerful and very meaningful. And so I felt a little bit nervous about doing this to try to capture those elements there. The commissioner, he gave me a lot to think about, but he specifically talked about Edgar Allan Poe as one of the main influences on him, but also the person that the piece is written in memoriam for. And I kind of looked at Poe's poetry. Poe has this very flowery kind of 19th century language sometimes. So finding one that kind of succinctly captured the type of atmosphere that I wanted the piece to have, both the sense of struggle, but also this sense of moving past that and moving into a sense of renewal, was challenging. So I found one particular work that I felt did that really in an interesting way. And that was this poem Israfel, which is about a angel that has heartstrings for a lute that is connected to its heart, so it can sing with absolutely perfect emotion, the most amazing emotions. But then the narrator, the sort of character that's telling you the story, describes trying to sing with his own song that may be less perfect, but is ultimately more personal and more meaningful to them. And that felt like a really good connection to this specific concept of the piece. The other thing that was given to me by the commissioner is that he and the person that it was written for, they were connected with the band Tool. And that is something that I knew almost nothing about. So I had to spend a real deep dive on their music, which is super interesting and super complex in its own way. And then trying to find a way to bridge that to the other sounds he wanted. The other one was Elsa's Procession to the Cathedral, the Wagner, obviously one of the most famous band arrangements of Wagner out there too. So finding a way to merge Wagner and Tool and also Edgar Allan Poe was a big task, and something I felt like it took me a few iterations to get to work it the way that I wanted it to. So, but ultimately, I feel pretty happy with the piece, and have really been amazed at the response, even just in the first couple performances that have happened so far.
And I think this idea of like trying to sing your own song is very much what composers do, right? You're trying to kind of use your own voice in this context here. But I think, the pieces that are personal, like the way you describe, like sometimes they are really difficult to write from my, understanding, but I think they can also be maybe the most rewarding when you get it right. And it seems to me like you feel like you really kind of were able to bring those things together pretty successfully.
Right, it's always a challenge, and it's always a little bit frightening. Honestly, you never actually know how it's going to work until the piece is out there in the world, and that's the great thing about art, but also one of the challenges. You don't have any control over that. But I'm just always so grateful to get these kinds of opportunities, and it's just such a fascinating process every single time. Each of these different commissions. It's nice to write music kind of for my own amazement, but I really have come to love writing commissions and figuring out how my own voice can adapt and feel appropriate for the specific needs of the people that are out there. I just feel like music is such a interdependent world. We have to support each other in the best way that we can, and I just find it an extremely gratifying process.
And just to kind of focus on this other new piece of yours, this pulsing onward piece, something that like really jumped out to me when I first heard your music those 10 years ago or whatever is that there's always like some really interesting kind of rhythmic or groove kind of element to your music that I also feel like is captivating. And how did you come to maybe develop that? I don't want to call it a style, but that element to your music. And then how did those rhythmic kind of practices play out in this pulsing onward piece and its kind of California pastoral kind of subtitle?
Yeah, the rhythmic thing has always been there for me. I would always skip to the whatever the fast movements were whenever I listened to like a new symphony or something like that. I was like, nah, I don't want to listen to the slow music. It's like, nah, it's boring. So finding that kind of sound, was always something that I loved. Particularly like Latin jazz has had such a big influence on me. I find that music just the most exciting thing. I just can't stop listening to it. So I've always been trying to find ways to do that. I got really into particular composers that did amazing work with this, developing that kind of thing. Bartok, Ligeti, Steve Reich, a number of different American kind of minimalist composers have developed these kinds of techniques, and a lot of those play out in this piece. Of course, John Adams is a big one too. John Adams definitely has a big influence on my style there too. With this specific piece, yeah, I was trying to use a number of different contrapuntal rhythmic techniques, but really make a extremely exciting and sort of forward kind of piece here. This was written for Gary Gilroy, who is retiring from Fresno State University. And if you know Gary at all, he is just an absolute force of nature. He is one of the most intense and exciting people to be around. You kind of can't help but be caught up in his energy. And that was like the main thing. Whatever the piece is, it has to have that feeling of just like relentless drive and relentless energy that kind of goes with that. And him being in California, living in California most of his life, was something that again I was really drawn to. I love California. I'm going there in just a few days actually to visit again, and so yeah, that just seemed like a perfect combination, a perfect fit for that. And I tried to honor some California composers in there, John Adams being one of those in the first movement there. So yeah, that one was really fun. A little easier on a certain sort of emotional level, but definitely still a really exciting process to try to capture someone's character like that.
Okay, so for each of these episodes, we've been trying to do something like kind of fun that speaks to the individual people. Okay, so for you, you and I are both kind of enjoyers of cool shoes, right? So for you, okay, this is what I came up with: a list of famous literary figures and artists throughout history, and then you tell me what shoe encompasses their whole vibes. And then we'll see if we can use AI to come up with some renderings or something, right? So I got a
Oh
list of
man.
about 6 or 7 here. And you just like first just like think about it for a second, just like tell me what shoe, what silhouette, what color, whatever, what jumps out to you, like what would this person wear? Okay, the first person I put on here was Franz Kafka. I know you are a lover of Kafka.
Yes. Oh wow. He doesn't seem like someone that would want to draw a lot of attention to himself. Uh, I don't know. I mean, it's like he would almost want to like whatever is the thing that makes you blend in the most. And like his time period, it would be something really basic, right? Just like black Oxfords or something like that.
Just kind of blend in.
Yeah, but if he was living today, maybe
Yes.
maybe like black New Balances or Skechers or something like that, like a
Or
classic
maybe
dad
like black
shoes.
Air Force Ones or something. Dad shoes, that's
Yeah,
good.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, what about Dali, Salvador Dali? What kind of shoes is he wearing
Oh
in 2025?
man, I mean, it would be probably something totally custom that some some person that I'm not even aware of would would create, Yeah. Yeah,
I
I
was
don't
thinking
know.
those like
Like,
gigantic like Balenciaga ones that you see that are like way too big or
yeah,
some like kind of like surrealist shoe or something maybe. I don't
I
know.
don't. I feel like that's even too mainstream. Yeah, he wouldn't have any like branding whatsoever. Yeah, I mean he's the master of branding himself. So whatever it is,
Yeah.
it would just be about him somehow. So, yeah,
Okay, what
as long as
about
it has like his name or whatever, that would be the main thing. Just to take, or like his mustache would be the laces or something.
okay, we'll see what AI can do for us. What about Walt Whitman?
Oh, Walt Whitman. That's again is a very a very restrained person in his personal life, even though he was such a huge emotional figure. That's a tough one. Yeah, in today's world, he would be cooler though than Kafka. I would think. I would think like really like minimalist white kind of sneakers.
But
Like
cool.
yeah, but cool. Like what those new Roger Federer, like on running ones, something like that. Really, really like restrained kind of look there. Again,
Okay,
that might
what
be too. I just think he's such a, not a commercial guy at all. It would have to be something really even more basic than that. I don't know.
all
Yeah.
right, I got a couple more here. What about Andy Warhol?
Oh man, the
See, I
ultimate.
have not prepped you on this list and you're just
I
rattling
know.
off all of this information.
I mean, the ultimate consumerist, the ultimate capitalist artist of all time. I mean, man. I hate to say it's probably Jordan's. He'd probably have
Nice.
Jordan's.
Just
Yeah.
like the red ones, just iconic.
No, it would be more like up to date. It would be more like immediately everybody like, oh, those are the cool ones. It'd be like
Okay.
the Travis Scotts or something like that.
Oh, there we go. Okay. That makes
Yeah.
sense. All right. What about Mary Shelley?
Oh, okay.
It's easy just to say green shoes, Frankenstein, but I feel like you have something deeper than that brewing over there.
Yeah, yeah. That's again. I mean, I feel like you pick all these people who have incredible internal lives, but like we're very sort of
Because you
restrained.
express it outwardly with your shoe selection. This is my whole
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
thesis of this list.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. Maybe I don't know women's shoes as well. Uh,
That's okay. Just kind of paint with a broad brush here. You don't, you can do color, style, what jumps out at you.
yeah, I would think like uh, kind of like a nice bold color, but like still kind of like a more flat kind of shoe. Not something
Okay.
that's sort of just like every day, but with just enough style to it.
Little flair, little flair.
Yeah, a little flair. I mean, with Shelley and Byron and all those people in her life, I feel like you'd have to have some style there built in. Yeah, yeah.
All right, I have two more. What about Hemingway?
Oh man, it's got to be American. It's got to be like outdoorsy sort of thing too. Yeah, yeah. I'm thinking like just kind of like classic um, Chelsea boots, something like that. You
Okay,
know? Yeah,
just
like
a solid
suede.
staple. Suede.
Yeah,
Okay, suede
yeah,
Chelsea boots.
yeah,
I like it.
yeah.
All right, and then last one. Everyone says we're living in dystopian times. What shoes would George Orwell be rocking today?
Probably nothing. Yeah, yeah. Just embrace
Embrace it.
the
Embrace the
yeah,
insanity of the
the
whole thing.
world. Yeah, everything that we must endure. Yes.
Okay, well, hopefully we can get some good renderings of some shoe selections there. I thought that would be kind of fun. Okay, so one more question for you, and as we kind of close this out here. But you said that you were just at Spain. You were recently inspired by probably some architecture, probably some visual art, maybe some literature. What are some of the things that are kind of like brewing in your mind right now that you're interested in exploring, or maybe that are maybe already in the works without spoiling anything? But what are some of the topics that are kind of top of mind for you that you feel like could make an interesting piece or might kind of find their way into your next couple commissions?
Right. Well, in Spain specifically, there were some amazing places that we went to that were, literally centuries old. In some cases, more than 1,000 years old, and in every building like that, they've been under construction for centuries as well, and continue to evolve. So you literally see these different styles piled on top of each other. The Mezquita de Cordoba is probably the most famous example of that. It's a mosque that was then converted into being a Catholic church, but they retained the mosque. The entire building is still there as part of it. So you have this, 12th century Arabic architecture combined with Catholic architecture, then moving into the 15th, 16th century. That kind of thing is amazing to me. The cathedral in Toledo is the one I've looked at the most for this, because it has this absolutely incredible Baroque addition added like hundreds of years after the original building was, but it works so seamlessly in that, So to me, I think of immediately all my counterpoint classes trying to combine 16th century counterpoint with 18th century counterpoint, this Baroque and Renaissance sort of worlds kind of coming together in this huge and powerful way. It's called the El Transparente, the transparency window, where it has this at certain times of day, this huge shaft of sunlight comes in and completely exposes this view of heaven with Jesus and the saints rising up towards heaven. It's just absolutely incredible. So yeah, thinking of something that might go with that is immediately top of mind there. And I got a clarinet concerto coming up here that's actually being commissioned by a Spanish clarinetist. And so I'm hopeful to draw on some of my experiences seeing a lot of the Spanish paintings in El Prado in Madrid. So that'll be kind of that piece, kind of scenes from El Prado that I'm looking forward to there. So yeah, those are a couple.
Okay, well, I'm excited about. I think that the kind of blending of the different architecture sounds like super usable and very interesting. And I think people could probably take a lot out of that just kind of from visualization and audiation.
Yeah,
So yeah, it's exciting. I'm pumped about it. All right, man. Thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate you greatly.
yeah, absolutely. It's a pleasure as always. Yeah, and yeah, it's such a fun and exciting process, and just so appreciative of all the support I've gotten from you and from the whole band community out there.
All right.